Hey everyone, thank you for taking some time and joining us at Imperfect Heroes podcast today. And just before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that you can catch us on YouTube and Rumble. So on Rumble, our channel is Imperfect Heroes. On YouTube, it is Little Hearts Academy. And you'll be able to find our episodes there if you want to see, you know, how beautiful we all look. and move on. And I'd like to also remind everybody that we are ongoing with all kinds of great activities and freebies and things like that that are going to be available on the website again, littleheartsacademyusa.com, and you'll be able to catch us there with coaching, with workshops, and all of those great things. So come and join us there. And if you like what you hear, hit that follow button and leave a rating and review. 5 stars is the appropriate number of stars. And the most important thing is tell a friend and have them join us here on the podcast. So today is we're talking about something that I totally love and I'm totally sold on. I love music, and I know that we learn more and retain more when it's connected to music. And so, in fact, it was fun when I was teaching kindergarten. I kind of had a thing going with our music teacher at the school to see if I could come up with songs that she hadn't heard of. Once in a while, I'd get there, but not too often. She was very well versed in music and in all kinds of songs. Well, today we have a music teacher with us, and his name is Bryson Tarbet, and he is also known as That Music Teacher. And Bryson also has a podcast called That Music Podcast. And so, Bryson, why don't you talk to us a little bit more about what you have going on?
Thank you so much for having me. Again, I am a music teacher. I love music. I believe in the power of it. But just like you were saying, there is a really big utilitarian use of music. You know, there's definitely music for music's sake, but the research and the anecdotal evidence of how music can support in a child's learning, and honestly, even in an adult's learning, is just it's just massive. And I'm really excited to see where we can get in this conversation and how we can make it applicable to your listeners.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I love just seeing the results that happen. And it was funny because when I was teaching, I had we had a program going on and we were supposed to sing a couple songs, and there was 3 kindergarten classes in that classroom. And the other teachers were just, for some reason, just struggling. I don't know if they just felt like they weren't musical. I heard them say, "Oh, I have a terrible voice." Kids don't care what kind of voice you have, honestly. They just love the act of singing. So we wound up having song practice in my room. And they all learned the song great. And we did a snappy job in getting it done. And so I think that's a misconception that a lot of people, parents as well as teachers, grandparents, that we think, oh, well, I'm not a good singer. Doesn't matter, does it?
Uh, you unwilling or unknowingly brought up one of my favorite topics to talk about, because children and humans, we are innately musical people. It isn't until we have adults or older siblings that say, oh, oh, you're, oh, don't sing, you don't have a good singing voice. Or for some of us, unfortunately, a music teacher that says just mouth the words, which is a whole other soapbox I don't want to get on. But like, it's crazy. If you go like sit in like a preschool playground and just listen, you'll hear these innately musical things. You'll hear that minor third pattern, na 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 na, like that is just like it's wild. And it truly is a developmental milestone, but it's musical. And the reality is that you don't need this perfect singing voice. You don't need to be the next Beyonce just in order to sing and enjoy music. Music has so many things, from lullabies to teaching the alphabet to understanding our emotions. And I truly believe that the world would be better if we all sang more and understood that, it doesn't matter if I quote unquote have a singing voice that I don't like, or, a bad singing voice. that music is still valid, and that voice and that singing is still incredibly important.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, we know that in that first year of life, as you're holding that baby, right? And you're having struggles with it, maybe calming down or it's overstimulated or whatever, to go into a quiet room and just hum to that baby. They feel that vibration in your chest as you're holding them. And not only does it help to calm the baby down, it helps to calm you down too. As a parent, you get stressed out when your baby's crying, you can't figure out why, and you can't figure out what's going on. And so sometimes that singing is even more valid, helping you calm down than it is for the baby, right?
Yeah, there's a wonderful book called The Musical Child by
Mm.
Joan Koenig, and it is just wonderful about kind of what we're talking about, that innately musical thing, how music can be something that we're using, kind of developing parallel to language, and
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes before a language is developing, and that it has mutual benefits for both the parent and the caregiver.
Yeah.
And it's just something that luckily we are starting to do a lot more research in this field, but there's just so much unknown about how truly transformative music can be,
Mhm.
especially in the early childhood.
Yeah. I had an episode, gosh, this was probably a year and a half ago, with a guy, Eric Parks, and he's a musical guy. That's just his deal. And he runs summer camps and he does all of these things. Well, he had a little girl that just was starting to learn the word no, right? Now. He wrote a song about it. And like, your favorite instrument is a piano, and no. And it got to where, as he was singing it, your favorite mountain is a volcano, no. And so he put all of these things into it. And so when she would say no, he'd start singing that song. And then she very quickly knew right when her parts were to come in with her no. And it became a laughing, fun thing and would turn things around. The funny thing was sometimes she just loved connecting with her dad. And so she would get that like little impy look on her face, and say no, just so that he would sing the song and they could do it together. And then they'd go on with whatever it is that they were supposed to do. And so, music can really make a difference in teaching our kids about responsibilities and about um, like you said, emotions and how to follow through. It can help you figure out like what is there our schedule for today, and you can put that to music. There's all kinds of things that you can do with music and kids.
Yeah, and I think it's something that we as a society understand and kind of, collectively agree on, when it's like a 1-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
2-year-old, maybe even a 3-year-old. But then they
Mm-hmm.
start getting older and it's like, no, 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 we don't, that's we put music in this box. That's, we only sing during music class, or even then I'm like, ooh, that's something that girls do, or things like that.
Mm.
And what I love about kind of what you were saying is music. I mean, for me, whenever I hear clean up, I'm like, oh, I gotta do it, because like I've been conditioned,
Mm-hmm.
because those musical transitions are wonderful ways to help students, to help children understand what's coming next, kind of remove some of the anxiety in the situation, but also, again, it just brings so much joy to the situation,
Yeah.
that wouldn't necessarily be brought the same way if we just said the words instead of singing them.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, even if you don't have a tune or a set song, it's okay to like have the kids hear you singing to yourself. Make up your own tune. I mean, it doesn't even have to be even tunish. It's just, you know, I am, or I think of Buddy the Elf, I am in the store and I am singing and, and he didn't know what to say, but he's just putting whatever he had to say to some kind of sound that was musical. And uh, it's a great example of ways that we as parents and as families can build that and pull that in. There was a professor, I'm sure he's retired by now, but his name's Michael Ballum. He's an opera professor out of Utah State, but he has performed in front of kings and queens and the presidents and all these kinds of things. But he's really into that therapy of music in so many ways in medicine, music and medicine. He did all kinds of research on that and how it helps with healing. But there was a year that he took an inner city junior high that had really low test scores. The kids were really struggling. And he convinced the school district to let him do this with this one, their lowest performing junior high. And what they did was for the first 10 minutes of every class, excuse me, for the first, oh my goodness, for the first 10 minutes of every class, they had a musical thing and it was all set up, and the music was there and the teachers were up in arms at first because it's like 10 minutes. We only get 50 minutes, 53 minutes per class, and you're going to take away 10 minutes. Our kids are already failing everything. But the school district and the principal had buy-in. So of course they got the teachers to do it. And within that 1 year, test scores soared. And at the end of the year, the teachers were all on board to do it in the future, do it some more. And it really improved. So there's so many really interesting studies and works that are being done with music and, all kinds of grades and how that relates to learning all kinds of subjects.
That really reminds me of the Hungarian school system. The pedagogy that me and a lot of other elementary music teachers follow is based off of the teachings and the studies of Zoltán Kodály, who is from Hungary. And when Kodály was kind of going through a real rough time in social, economic, and geopolitical time, there was this realization that Hungary was really missing its national identity. There wasn't a lot of things that were like purely Hungary. So one of the things that happened is Kodály redid all of the music education framework, and that really still goes through the educational system today. I mean, music is at the core of the Hungarian school systems. I'm talking multiple times a day music classes, starting from the first year you're in school. And the reality is, just like you said, music is so wonderful and has such great musical aspects. But when we're thinking about rhythm and meter and all of these other things that are applicable and how it affects the brain in other ways, helps create these well-rounded students that just happen to have this incredible foundation of music if they so choose to take the next step in their musical training.
Yeah, so right on. So right on. And so so music class isn't just music class. And so when we hear about school districts that are saying, oh, we're going to cancel school for budgetary reasons or whatever, that's the dumbest thing that they could do, because it bleeds into every part of learning, just every part of learning. And we have so many studies that show that. I happen to know because I have sat in on many a government meeting, both at the state, Nevada state, and I used to live in Nevada, and on the national level, that when they are looking at, they didn't get the money they wanted from some bond or whatever, that what they'll do is they'll cut the programs that are the most obvious, the ones that parents will get up in arms in to try and get them to vote for the bond or whatever. But in reality, those things are the last things they should cut. I could think of a million other places we could cut other than like music and art and, the recess, PE, all those kinds of things. So, so note to parents, if they start talking like that, know what they're doing. They're manipulating you to try and get you to do what they want you to do, instead of being realistic about what is the best benefit per money coming in. And music is right up there at the top of there's great benefits compared to the money you put into the program.
I mean, the reality is I've seen many districts in my area do exactly what you're just saying.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying, hey, if this levy fails, the marching band's gone. All these super
Mm-hmm.
visible things that have a lot of people that have this kind of really big impact, they'll say, we're going to have to cut them because we don't have the money. And there is a definite issue with the way we fund our schools here in this country. But the reality is just like you said, there is so much that's happening in the music classroom that is not just me teaching musical
Mm-hmm.
skills. There's so much teamwork and emotional regulation and spatial awareness and understanding of differences. And
Mm-hmm.
quite frankly, in this, in this high stakes testing environment that we're in, oftentimes students are sometimes unwillingly or accidentally taught that there is a right answer or the wrong answer. And the reality is oftentimes there are many answers. And what I love about the music classroom is that it lets students see something that isn't just this is right or this is wrong. For instance, if I'm having my students compose their own piece of music, yes, I'm going to put some parameters around there, but like
Mm-hmm.
everyone's going to have something different. And
Mm-hmm.
they might say, well, how was that? I'm like, I don't know. What did you think of that? How would you give feedback to someone who played that? Or
Mm-hmm.
what could we do to make this sound more interesting? And allowing them to have that lateral level thinking, again, it's helping them increase their musical skills, but it's
Right.
also giving them a lot of skills and interpersonal skills and intrapersonal skills that allow them to apply those to other aspects of their education.
So true. So amazingly true. And it's amazing how fast they pick up on it. So actually just this last weekend, so now we live in Eastern Idaho, and I have a daughter in Reno, and she's got two kids, a boy 7 and a girl 5. And so we got them a piano. Their dad plays, and we've been thinking, oh, this is a great opportunity for the grandkids. So we were over there this weekend and had the pianos delivered. We delivered the piano, and this 7-year-old boy went in, and he just kind of disappeared. But he's kind of a thoughtful loner kind of a kid in many ways, and so I didn't think much of it. And he came to me and he said, "Nina," that's what my grandkids call me, is Nina. And he said, "I want to play this." And he showed me a paper, and he had gone in and he had written, they weren't on a staff, but they were musical notes. And he had half notes and quarter notes and eighth notes, and he had them tied together and all of this. And I was like, wow. And so we looked at it and we clapped out the rhythm of the notes that he made. This is a 7-year-old. And I said, "Sylvan, where did you learn how to do this?" He said, "My music teacher." And so, I mean, even at 7 years old, which he just finished first grade. Well, he's about to finish first grade. He, um, he understood all of those kinds of concepts, and then being able to clap it out and count 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. He could do that. And I was just so amazed. And so I think that oftentimes we don't give our kids credit for how much they can learn at such a young age. And I think music is more important at the earliest stages than even, a 4-year-old doesn't need to know how to read or write yet. But if they can clap out sounds and understand basics of music, that's going to help them read and write and do math as the age it becomes more appropriate.
That's one thing that I wish more people understood, because when I talk to adults and say I'm a music teacher, I usually get a lot of the same types of interactions. First of all, they usually, oh, like choir, and I say no, like elementary school, and then they go, oh, the recorder, which is a whole other topic. But one thing that I always hear them say is, I wish I never stopped, or hey, I used to play the trombone in band. I wish I wish I still knew how to do that. And well, first of all, that's still an opportunity.
Sure.
But what can kind of be really tricky about that is the way that musical development works mimics very closely to how language development works. And it's just like trying to learn a language when you're 2 versus when you're 52. The way that our brains work, they're so much more plastic the younger we are. And that's
Yeah.
why we have these children that they're picking up on things so quickly musically because they're exploring it in a way that is developmentally appropriate and that is really allowing them to just use it and essentially babble in music. I mean, that's
Yes.
when I used to teach piano lessons, I would have my students the first day of like play something. Like let's see what we can come up with. And it's just like when you have a baby that's going mama mama mama, they're not saying mama, but they're going to eventually start understanding that mama is going to have that connotation and have that things like that. And it's just that the more we use it and the more we interact with music and use our musical skills, those are going to actually strengthen the neural connections in our brain, which will make it easier to do the music stuff, which is awesome. But it's also
Absolutely.
those connections are already there and can be used for other purposes.
Yes. Yes. And so I mean, well, I just love the openness and the opportunities. And as a teacher, I could see my class, they're like, oh gosh, we need to move around or something because they start doing their thing. And so we had like there were tons of things that we could just sing on our own. There were videos, music videos, there's Go Noodle, there's all kinds of things that you can do to get on, and there's actions and movement to the music. And it's funny that as we would walk down the hall, I would have teachers like, your kids are like amazing on the hall walk. But they were all singing, and so they were walking in step to their thing. We even had like little movements that they could do while they were walking, so they're not hitting and bucking each other. But those are things that we can do in the car, we can do at grandma's house, we can do that just at home. There's all of these sites that are available for music for young kids that you can do at home. There's no reason for you to say, oh, well, that's a school thing. And really have it in both places. So the kids become very fluid, you know, and music is just part of everything I do.
I totally agree. And what I wish that we could get more parents and caregivers to understand is that if there's research that says if you read to your child at home, they're going to be so much more successful. But when we think about that, is if we don't show what music making could be, or even music enjoying, even just listening to music, if we don't model that at home as well, it's even less than half. We're barely filling that jar. We're barely giving them the exposure and the opportunity to babble so that they can continue to develop that and understand what they like and what they dislike and how to share that. One thing that I do with my students is, I say, you're not going to love every song that I play or every song that we sing or every game that we do. But what I want you to do is eventually be able to figure out why you don't like that song. Is that instrument too loud? Do you not like it when it's really the timbre of the instrument is super bright? And again, I know I keep saying this, but those are wonderful musical skills, but they're also just like really applicable skills to being a person in this world we live in.
Yes. And I love that you challenge them to figure out why they don't like a song. And is it the instruments? Is it the rhythm? Is it, some rhythms are very aggressive and some rhythms are very soothing and calming. And we know that music has been used to incite as well as music has been used to calm people down, to feel a reverence. When you walk into a church or something and you hear that reverent music playing, maybe on the organ or whatever, it can get you excited about praising. It can get you excited about clearly old fart, but for me to go back and listen to the hits, of the 70s, and that was just great music. But when I hear it, it just brings that smile to my face. And there are memories associated with certain songs, or, that's why couples have, oh, that's our song, because they're relating that to something that sweet or wonderful, or when they met or whatever. And that brings that tenderness back to them. So music can bring in all kinds of emotions and memories and reactions.
I never thought that I would be a person that would be like fascinated by neuroscience. But when you look at
Ah,
neuroscience and how it interacts with music, it's just it's mind blowing
mhm,
the way that, kind of like you were saying, the certain types of music will actually stimulate parts of your brain to make them feel like they're in danger. And that's why when
mhm,
you're watching a scary movie, there is a very specific type of music that they're playing, because they're playing on that as well. Or when you're watching, a really sad part of the movie, there's different
mhm.
things going on. And you mentioned memories. Music and memories is huge,
Yeah.
especially as the research continues to grow in dementia and Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
Being a and as someone who has had my own family affected by Alzheimer's,
Me too.
it, it it's really amazing to see someone who unfortunately is aware of very little going on around them, or
Mhm,
what situation they're actually in. But then you play a song and they're singing along with it, and
mhm.
it will literally reignite parts of their brain that were misfiring, so that they're able to experience that experience again. And it truly is magical to see how music has a physical effect on the way that our brains are wired.
So you're so exactly right, because um, Alzheimer's is very strong in my family as well, and my mom died with it. But it was interesting. Neil Diamond was her guy, right? And mom had a beautiful singing voice. In fact, the people in we finally did have to put her in a home just because the medications were too much for us to keep track of and stuff. But um, they thought she had been a professional singer because she just sang all the time. She had this lovely voice, and she would be gone. You know what I mean? With dementia, she was kind of gone. And we would put on Neil Diamond, especially Hello, My Friends, Hello. And you'd see mom come back. She would light up, she would sing, and she sang it beautifully, never missing a word. And then as soon as the song was over, fade to black, you know? And so
There,
that is true.
there's a wonderful TikTok account. It's Orifbone, Orifbone, which follows a 95-year-old woman named Elaine, who is in a home with dementia,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
will often be very not really be with it, and not really have an idea of who she's with or who's there with her, but can pull out these songs and like full on Claire de Lune, and these Chopin pieces. And again, it really shows how music is a thing that truly physically changes us, not
mhm.
just something that we listen to while we're driving.
Yeah, you're right. You're so right. In fact, even when we're driving, it can either help us stay awake or lull us to sleep. It's so in even if you say you're not a musical person, your heart beats, and your heart beats in rhythm, right? We are put together musically in my mind. And so, even the way we breathe and all of that has a rhythm and a beat to it that, whether we acknowledge it or not, we are all musical people, and our bodies in the process of living create music.
I agree completely. I think oftentimes that heartbeat is one of the first things we hear, and one of the last things we hear in our life, because
Yeah.
it's inside us, or at the very beginning of life, it's the only thing around us. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that when we think of that, that is a very clear way that we are human, that we are not robots. We're not ticking.
Mm-hmm.
We are each beating with our unique little sounds. Everyone's heart sounds slightly different, and that's
Mm-hmm.
is truly is a magical thing when you really get down and think about it.
Yeah, it really is. And I think too, we when we use music with kids who are struggling with things like maybe ADHD, the hyperactivity, just being a boy, all those things that go on, music is really valuable in getting the wiggles out, getting them to focus on things. Oftentimes with boys, it's well, and the girls would like this too, though. But, as we'd go down the hall, maybe we weren't singing a song, but we were chanting a rhythm, right? You look at the military, and as they're running or doing whatever it is that they're doing, you hear the cadence that the sergeant will holler out. Not that the sergeants all have great singing voices, but but it helps them to get that rhythm of life going together, and they become more of a unit. Um, and so I think too, like my youngest son, if anyone's listened for long, they know my youngest son, Christian, was like off the charts ADHD, just struggled so much. And the first thing that he really got introduced to, even before kindergarten, was drumming. He would be drumming on anything. How many little kids do we see that are always there banging on pots and pans or on buckets or on the wall or whatever they can? That banging and that creating a rhythm is something that helps them organize their mind, and it really helped with Christian. In fact, when he was little, well, probably about 6, 7 years old, and we had a neighbor down the street. This was when we lived in Vegas, and he was a studio musician on the drums. He had this awesome drum set. It was just so cool. And our kids were about the same age, and they played together. And one Saturday morning, we get up, and the door is knocking. Someone's at our door. So I go over, it's about 7 a.m, and there's our neighbor with our little guy, Christian. I'm like, oh, I thought he was in bed. And no, he was drumming at my house. For some reason, their door had been unlocked, and he'd gotten up. I said, when did he show up? Well, about 6:30, he came in and started drumming. And he said, we let him drum for a while because he was happy. He enjoyed it. And so that even became a thing that helped him. Okay, if we have a good report at school, you can go down and drum, on Jake's drums. Otherwise, you have to drum on the drums we have at home. And he loved it, but it really helped him with organizing himself physically as well as mentally. And so this can work with kids who are just super active for whatever reason. It's worked with some autistic kids as well. And so, and two, music is math. It's just math. You've got the quarter notes and the whole notes and the half notes and the rests. And my grandson even had rests in on his music. It was so cute. But and so if they're able to get those things going when they start learning fractions, when they start learning addition and subtraction and all of that kind of stuff, it's all going to come into play because they know music.
Yeah, and that's one thing I wish more teachers would understand. And I feel like a lot of it comes from the system where teachers in general are just overworked and underpaid. But the reality is that we are all on this same journey. We are all on the same goal, working towards the same goal of helping our students be educated. I happen to do that through music. While no, my subject area is not tested, and this, that, and the other thing is we are all helping holistically educate the student. And I feel like a lot of it comes from what we've talked about earlier, which is just that pure, like, literal ignorance of what actually happens in a music classroom and how music can really benefit a child, and how it's not just a planning period, and it's not just something you do for fun or to kill time on a Saturday because if your kid, you have to stay home with your kids all day, they're going to destroy the house. It truly is beneficial in so many ways. And I don't know. I can't talk enough about how much music has changed my life, and how much I've been able to see it impact the lives of my students.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just, I hope the parents are getting the gist of this, that how important music is, that we don't want to be useful idiots, I guess, where, they're going to hold that hostage for our kids' education. because they didn't get what they wanted. I want us to understand that music envelops everything that we do, and that we are musical beings. Um, I've heard I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. Yeah, but you can keep a rhythm. Your heart tells me that. You're breathing, your body is keeping a rhythm. And so, all of those things come into play. And so, Bryson, I would love for you to talk to us just for a second about your own podcast that you have, and then how people can get in touch with you.
For sure. So I realized very early in my teaching career that elementary music teachers were kind of stuck on what we lovingly refer to as Music Teacher Island, where we're the only people at our schools teaching music. And we oftentimes have to, don't really get PD in our content area. And that's kind of why I created my business, That Music Teacher, is to connect with other elementary music teachers and to work through some of these situations that make our jobs difficult. And I created That Music Podcast to share some of the things that I've worked in my classroom and to amplify the voices of others, so that we as music teachers can feel like we are actually a part of a team, and we're not just there because the real teachers, quote unquote, need to have their planning period. And so we can feel like what we're doing actually matters, and that we actually know how to do it. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. The best place to reach out to me is over on Instagram at That Music Teacher. I love having conversations about music, clearly, and I'd love to reach out.
That sounds fantastic. And two, I want to encourage you, parents, what they're learning in school in music certainly translates at home. And so even if you're a parent, you're not a music teacher, I would suggest even listening in on your podcast to get some of the feels of what are the things that they're doing in music class, and how is it moving forward, and how can I take some of that and use it at home too. So definitely give him a listen, check him out, because I'm really excited about his energy with music and how it completes us. And you can tell this is one of my fun subjects. I really enjoy it. So, Bryson, before we go, I asked all my guests the same question at the end of the day, and that is, we know there are no perfect parents, but how would you describe a successful parent?
My biggest thing would be communication, willing to listen, willing to share, and willing to realize that everyone makes mistakes. And sometimes you have to be the bigger person and say, hey, I dug my heels in and I shouldn't have, and I'm sorry.
Wow. Yeah, that is certainly an important part of being successful, is being able to humble yourself, tell your kiddo, I'm sorry. Don't Once you realize you're in the wrong, don't dig in further. And so you just have just great insight and advice, probably from all that music you teach. So, Bryson, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I really appreciate it. And for everyone else who is listening, please be sure to leave a review and hit follow, and leave a comment. We would love to hear your thoughts about our conversation today. And I will respond, and I will forward comments as well to Bryson. And yeah, and we'll have a conversation ourselves. So, Bryson, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
You betcha.